1.
On a high value colour, in behind the black. Yes, you need to score well, I think, against Fergal, get assert his authority on the match. That's not a particularly good shot. If you do, well, if you are watching tonight, a very good evening. Just let us know who you think is going to win the UK Championship this year. I'd be pleased to know what you think about that. So one of the, if you like, Triple Crown events. That, the Masters, of course, and the World Championships, but there are plenty of other huge events these days as well. This is not a nice position to be in on this shot, is it? It's right over the top of that red.
Yes, of course, Ding Junhui will be defending his title that he won so impressively 12 months ago in a high-quality match with Stephen Maguire to win his 3rd. Higgins going for his 4th.
Well, it's already a good opportunity. I mean, the reds are nicely split.
16.
Interesting decision to stay on the
17.
black. He could take blacks with a number of these reds if he wishes to. I'm not suggesting for 1 second he's going to start this campaign with a 147, but he has knocked in a couple lately. So he's playing well enough. And there's no reason why he shouldn't continue on the black. Little deft, slight nudge on that high red there. Played it well.
Yes, he earned the best part of $500,000 on the table last season without, as I mentioned, winning a ranking title. Of course, he did partner the aforementioned Stephen Maguire to the World Cup title, beating China B, and he was runner-up to Maguire in the 6 Reds World Championship. Came a cropper against Kurt Mafflin in the 2nd round at the Crucible, which was a fantastic
25.
match where Higgins played very well, but Mafflin played even better. 13-11 he lost. He's already made the semi-finals this season of the first leg of the Home Nations, the English Open, where he lost to eventual champion Trump, who of course has just added another Northern Ireland Open to his collection with that superb victory once again over Ronnie O'Sullivan, his victim 3 times running in that event. Oh, but that's gone astray from Higgins. Black off its spot. Yes, he was tight
Joe Higgins,
to the
25.
side cushion, but he'll be disappointed to have missed that.
Yes, it's not a particularly nice shot to play, but like you say, expected him to get it. I was already having a little look there about the 140 break being the highest that we saw for Mark Selby this afternoon, which is a £15,000 all-in break price for the whole of the UK Championship.
1.
So it's not to be sniffed at. Anyway, Fergal with an opportunity back straight away.
O'Brien isn't one of the quicker players on the tour. Of course, his match with Dave Gilbert in qualifying for the World Championship 3 years ago has become somewhat infamous for the final frame, final qualifying round, in excess of 2 hours. But he is capable of heavy scoring when he gets on a roll, so Higgins will be taking nothing for granted this evening.
Well, yes, of course, he made 5 centuries, didn't he, in a best of 11. And reminded of that by someone who contacted me earlier on. Jimbo O'Reilly reminds me of the 5 centuries that he made in a match. Like I say, anyone who's watching, let us know where you're watching from. First time we've ever had the first round of the UK Championship. Foldsy147 is my Twitter. Let us know if you're enjoying the coverage, and if you want, give us a selection for the UK Championship this year. Is it the obvious? Is it Judd Trump or Ronnie O'Sullivan or somebody else going to win? There are plenty of big players in this. You know, Mark Selby and your Mark Allen, Neil Robertson, anyone I've forgotten, the defending champion, Ding Junhui. Anyway, that was a bad miss. Missed it by a long way.
I'll go round 8.
Yes, that match you referenced, of course, was here at the UK Championship 2016. O'Brien knocking in 5 centuries and beating Barry Hawkins from 3-1 down, but breaking down rather earlier than he wanted to. And so Higgins, having missed that black off its spot, pretty much straight back in again. This wonderful tournament was first staged back in 1977. We've had some great finals down the years, perhaps none greater, or certainly more dramatic than the one that Higgins won in 2010 against Mark Williams, when he was 4 down with 5 to play, 9-5 adrift, and then at 9-7 needed a snooker, managed to get it before winning 10-9.
A suggestion from Niall Kelly that it's going to be Selby or Trump this year. Well, you couldn't argue with either of those. You'll get some value with the pair of them. Now that Selby has got through a sticky first round match this afternoon against Michael White. He's off the tour now, but he's probably about a top 40 player at worst. I know he's off the tour, but he's better than that. So Selby will be pleased to have dodged one there. There are some first round matches that are considerably easier than others. That wasn't an easy one. I think we're going to name and shame anyone that we think is an easy draw, but I think the results will back that up this week.
Another error from O'Brien, and breaking news from one of our outside tables. Scott Donaldson beaten in that absolute marathon match with Simon Lichtenberg, who's won 6-3. They were locked together at 3-all. What seems like an age ago now, but Lichtenberg has come through. Good win for him.
1.
And Jamie Clark has edged out Martin O'Donnell 6-5. Clark, who was so impressive at the Crucible back in the summer, knocked out Mark Allen with a fantastic performance in the first round. Then had that quite eventful showdown with Anthony McGill. He's through by the odd frame. The winner of this will play the Daniel Wells or Gerard Green. This is actually the second meeting this year. Higgins prevailing in the European Masters back in February 5-2. In fact, you've got to go back to 2007 for the last of Fergal's victories over Higgins, who leads the head-to-head 9-3.
Well, he played into a very wide expanse there to ensure that the red was available. I mean, he's overhit it really, but it's so much margin for error. I don't think he meant to be quite over that far to the left. Just got to control the cue ball here, and I don't think he's entirely got to grips with the speed of this table yet.
17.
And that was a bit more like it. It just takes a little while for the pace of the shot to become natural. I think your brain adapts really to whatever speed of table you're on after small amount of time on that table. Now, what is the shot here? I mean, might play to Callan the top bed of those two close together. Yeah, perfectly done. Question of getting over the line. He's not entirely happy though, John, is he?
24.
A bit of head shaking already, but I think in potting this red, the cue ball's coming towards the black a little. Might be what it is.
Yeah, there have been times in the last couple of seasons or so where Higgins has sounded pretty downbeat about how he feels about the game these days, and on occasion has almost sounded as though he's fallen out of love with it. But I think his decision to start practicing in a specific unit in Glasgow with Stephen Maguire and Anthony McGill, to get himself out of the house and
32.
to make practice feel like a job, but an enjoyable job, has certainly helped rekindle his passion for the game and for winning. Now he's just looking to add another title to an already formidable CV. Of course, he's third on the all-time list of ranking event winners with 30.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying about the so-called unit they're playing in. I have to say, it doesn't sound the most joyful thing, does it? Just basically a room with tables in it. The snooker club has always had a lot of characters in them, a lot of different people, a lot of people enjoying themselves. What they've got is a pretty sterile atmosphere just for having their practice in it. It's a little bit far removed from your snooker club that was so popular in the 80s, 70s and 80s. But whatever it is, it's doing the job. It may lack charm, but it's bringing results.
Well, the yellow just now was frame ball, so Higgins has certainly got this frame one now. Needed a couple of opportunities to get it done, but off to a good start. He certainly won't be taking O'Brien for granted. And he'll also be looking to re-establish the formidable form he showed in the early rounds last week, before that hiccup against Ding, I should say.
45.
Cued that nicely.
46.
Won his first UK title the same year he won his first world title, 1998, and of course in winning his maiden title at the Crucible, he also
54.
simultaneously became world #1 for the first time. Had to wait till 2000 for his second, and then a further 10 years for his third. So could that be a good omen for Higgins?
'61.
Well, that was, I know, an academic, but it was a pretty good pot, wasn't it? Along the cushion there.
John Higgins, 72.
Yeah, that was a very competent clearance to the pink from Higgins of 72. Fergal O'Brien did get in early after Higgins missed the black off its spot, but O'Brien finds himself 1-0 behind. O'Brien now in his 49th year, Higgins in his 46th. But a gulf in terms of their respective rankings, of course. Higgins still #6 in the world, 3 spells at world #1. O'Brien, a former world #9, now down at 120. having turned pro the year before Higgins in 1991.
Yeah, I think Fergal is a very tough opponent when he can get his teeth into a match and really, you know, dig in early, and then he, you know, his concentration and his determination is up there with the best. But for someone like John Higgins, if he can get away from him early, that would be his way, I think, of putting the match to bed. John will not be fazed by anything that Fergal can throw at him, whereas other players find him a very difficult opponent to play because he plays all the correct shots, doesn't necessarily rush, and you know, he's a hard match player. But he's up against one of the toughest of the lot in John.
Yes, I guess he'll take heart from his very recent success against another of the very toughest players the game has ever known, Mark Selby, in qualifying for the German Masters, one of many upsets in the early rounds of that event. 5-3 win from 3-1 behind. So if he can beat Selby, he'll be thinking, well, if things go my way and I play my A game tonight and Higgins is slightly off the boil, I can beat John as well.
Yeah, I watched some of that match with Selby. He did play well, especially towards the end. But like you say, both of these two have got through to Berlin for the German Masters, so that will be pleasing for them.
Yes, an awful lot of the leading lights didn't make it. Obviously Selby being one. Mark Allen, the Champion of Champions winner. Neil Robertson missed out, beaten by Ben Wollaston, who then repeated the trick, of course, last week in the Northern Ireland Open. Kyron Wilson, former winner of the event, so a bit of a graveyard, wasn't it, those early qualifying rounds for the big guns, or a lot of them anyway. Well cued red from O'Brien, but cue ball's not great.
Yes, of course, Judd Trump got through, didn't he? He's very much snooker's golden boy now, I think. You know, it's a extended run of great wins, 2 years of it. Well, he's overcut there, and because he had to take it on, he's given John a wonderful chance here. And so far, Fergal, who's been trying to play the right shots, has missed a couple of important balls. And John Higgins with another chance.
Yeah, I think Trunk proved, if there was any doubt about it, in beating O'Sullivan for the third time in the tournament last week, that he is unquestionably the best in the world right now. O'Sullivan, of course, is the world champion, but Trump is miles ahead at the top of the rankings and deserves to be there. And he's now won 7 of his 10 finals against O'Sullivan, and that's a stat that he highlighted in his post-match interviews. There's something quite extraordinary against a player who, by common consent, is the best of all time. Meanwhile, Higgins looking good to build something sizable again here.
$16. 17. $24.
Just to mark your card for other matches we've got for you coming up over the course of the next 3 days. Kyron Wilson will be in action tomorrow afternoon against Ashley Hugill. That's on the main match table. And in the evening, Sean Murphy, another former UK champion, another Triple Crown winner, will play Lee Walker. Wednesday, Neil Robertson.
32.
He's in action against Brian Ochoyski. And in the evening on Wednesday, Ronnie O'Sullivan, who, of course, is the most decorated UK champion of all time with 7 titles, He begins his bid for an 8th against Leo Fernandez. Ali Carter will be on the other table on Wednesday evening. Had he beaten O'Sullivan in the semi-final, he would have been back in the provisional top 16 with the Masters in mind. So a big tournament for Carter. He's up against Ash Carty in round 1. Then on Thursday, Mark Allen and Liang Wenbo are in action. Judd Trump begins his title bid in the evening, and in between it'll be the defending champion Ding up against Jamie Curtis Barrett. So a lot of snooker to look forward to in the first 4 days of this tournament, and you can enjoy it all with us here on Eurosport.
40.
I don't think he's got the angle here to run through onto the black. It's like he's just off straight to me. Takes him up the table. Yeah, that's okay though.
$41.
This is not a good shot from John. He's lucky there. He could have just drifted a little further. Don't think he meant to come quite that close to the pink, but
46.
anyway, John's not quite perfect shot. Is still absolutely fine. It's a very solid start, but John has become incredibly dependable in these matches. I think you've just got to play your best game to beat him.
47.
He'll be disappointed to have finished there, however. I mean, it was a straightforward shot to finish on the other side of the blue. Now he's just going to have to run the cue ball around the angles with pace. And that was not part of the plan either.
52.
I don't think there's anything in the bunch that he can make into a plant. He's looking at the two end reds, left-hand reds. Maybe they could be transformed into a plant. I don't think they're in line, but he could make them into a plant potentially. Well, it's left jaw as we look, but if he hits it on the right as we look, it should straighten it up. Not enough.
John Higgins, 52.
Should have won the frame there, I think. That's what John's viewpoint will be.
Well, O'Brien will be happy enough just to be back at the table. He would have expected Higgins to make it 2-0 there. Got a lot of work to do to get back into the frame, but at least he has a chance. Really good pot.
1.
Yeah, played it nicely.
I mentioned he's only beaten Higgins 3 times in their 12 meetings, but one of those, of course, was very significant. It was the semi-finals of the British Open more than 20 years ago now, 1999, which, of course, Fergal went on to win his only ranking title to date. Beat Anthony Hamilton in the final, one of 2 players who sadly had to withdraw from the tournament because of positive COVID tests, Ryan Day being the other.
4.
So we wish them well. Zhu Zi and Jack Jones were the recipients of a bye into the round of 64.
Red by the pink goes to the left middle. And he's made the same mistake that John made. One of the reasons his break ended is because he didn't get top side of the blue, which means his next shot mid-range, I think. I don't think Fergal will punch the cue ball around the angles. He's not Judd Trump, but not many people are. Judd plays this sort of a shot with power quite brilliantly. So Fergal just playing it more conventionally. It's just up and down to leave himself a middle range shot here. He shouldn't really be faced with this. Just have something easier. that looked bad. And when you hit the other red on the way through, it looked bad. And to be honest, he wasn't very close to the pot. Even if you take the other red away that was obstructing a little, you know, he's missed his pot by 3 or 4 inches at least. So it could be a frame loser, if you like, something that is going to give the frame to John. This time the cue ball finishes short again.
1.
But with the red down the table on the left, you should be able to play him behind it. Sitting in your chair, you can't help but dwell on shots that have been and gone. The natural there. So
6.
47 in, so red-black, and that's enough. Another red will absolutely seal the deal.
Struck that well. Higgins would have been frustrated to have broken down on 52 just now. And at the moment, Fergal O'Brien, with the chances he has had, and he has had a couple, has not been able to inflict any damage, and so it's looking like 2-0.
15.
O'Brien knows he's going to have to sharpen up if he's to be competitive this evening. Mind you, he was 3-1 down to Selby in German Masters qualifying, so he won't be panicking. And these best of 11s do give you that little bit more room to manoeuvre if you do make a shaky start. In the best of 7s, which of course is the way of things in the early rounds of the home nations,
23.
you're under huge pressure if you lose the first 2.
Played it fine there. Nice cueing again. Again, end of frame shots. Of course, we saw Ronnie O'Sullivan taking the end of frames quite seriously when in front and behind yesterday, and for a lot of the week, just deciding that you know, he wouldn't just thrash the balls around the end of a frame. He was kind of using it to get practice. I mean, it wasn't much fun to watch, really, I have to say, especially in the frames where he's a long way behind. But as I said at the time, you know, he's entitled to do it. It's not as much fun as watching O'Sullivan play brilliantly, but there's no reason why he can't. Nothing in the rules of the game say otherwise. I don't think it's disrespectful. It's just
41.
It's not the best viewing. That's all I'll say about it.
Yeah, and the other thing to say is that in years gone by, had O'Sullivan been on the other end of that approach, I think he would possibly have become frustrated on occasion. But he says that he's just thoroughly enjoying playing at the moment, and the more he can play, the more he likes it. Meanwhile, Higgins clears up once again. A very satisfactory start for the 3 times UK champion. Fergal O'Brien has made mistakes and he's been heavily punished by one of them. No, he has been very consistent in the biggest events. Of course, he made 3 consecutive world finals, losing to Selby, Williams and Trump. And I think certainly that took some of the stuffing out of him, and we mentioned that at times he may have fallen out of love with the game. Having come so close to adding to his tally of world titles, that would have certainly stung, particularly the finals against Selby, first up when he was so far ahead initially, and Williams when he came back so brilliantly and very nearly got the better of his great class of 92 rival. But he's playing some really good stuff again, and he's certainly a threat this week. And next, of course, the champion won't be crowned until a week on Sunday evening. £200,000 for the winner.
John just trying to get that cue ball underneath the ball cushion. He's done a pretty good job there. That's perfect pace. Fergal, if he plays the bunch, it's always risky that you'll push a red out into open play. He might try and play the loose red, but in fact, it looks like he's going to play the top red just above the bunch, on just below the pink. Yeah, that way he wasn't going to open very much up. It's a very good safety shot, this. That's a good shot from Fergal.
First blood to Barry Hawkins against Riley Parsons over on the Eurosport app on table 2. Ben Wollaston, who had those 2 fine wins in consecutive weeks against Neil Robertson for the German Masters and the Northern Ireland Open. He's up against former world semi-finalist, the Devonian, Andy Hicks. First frame underway. And Daniel Wells and Gerard Green are underway too. And of course the winner of that plays whoever wins this in the round of 64.
Yes, of course, Riley Parsons, you mentioned there. He just come out of isolation, hasn't he? Tested positive. Had to miss out on the Northern Ireland. So I'm guessing he hasn't exactly been able to put a lot of hours in. Same applied to the other man you mentioned, Daniel Wells. It's affected a number of players.
Yes, the government advice is that you shouldn't be retested now, having had COVID and served your isolation time for a further 90 days, because it's possible to return a false positive if you are, owing to lingering cells following contracting the virus. So I guess for those players who have sadly had to isolate following a positive test, at least having done so, they now know that they won't be required to be retested for 3 months effectively.
Fergal could do with getting in early here. Black is safe, that's the problem. Look of absolute determination as ever on Fergal's face when he gets down for a shot. Now it might be that he can only see the black here. No, he can just play around 2 cushions and get in behind the green. If he judges it well, he'll have John snookered. Well, he hit it anyway, but not quite enough of the green to make that happen.
Another of the class of 92 was in action earlier today. Mark Williams seeing off Ben Hancorn without losing a frame. There was only 1/2 century from Williams in that win. And the stats tell us he was playing at 15 seconds a shot, so he wasn't hanging about. Sporting a slightly scary beard at the Marshall Arena last week, Williams. Clearly playing pretty well though. Although he did lose out to his compatriot Dominic Dale in last week's event. Williams a 2 times champion, of course, of the UK.
Well, Doesn't look like the most difficult escape at first, but he's got to keep the ball safe is the biggest concern.
Oh.
And he has
Yes.
not managed either,
Higgins,
hasn't
4.
hit it or kept it safe. John will certainly have a look at this red. It's not impossible to have it put back, but the red on the black spot, he would fancy into pot, and he could even go up for the green. Probably not doing much damage. It is an opportunity, you feel? I think the game has changed a lot the last few years. Misrule is all very well, but players won't have the balls put back if they've got something to go at. This was actually completely understandable, especially with the cue ball heading up the table, that he would take that on. It's given him something of a chance here already.
High value colours clearly not ideal right now, but that could change pretty quickly. Higgins has already made 3 breaks of over 50 this evening. Pair of 50s in the previous frame. And he struck that nicely with the rest to get top side of the blue. Positive early signs for Higgins.
Well, there's just no nonsense with him, isn't there? It just plays. You feel like he's as good at playing the table as anybody, really. I don't think he's fazed by whoever's playing. You know, he could be playing O'Sullivan, who's got a pretty good record against, or someone at the bottom reaches the ranking list, but you feel they'll always play the same game. And if they happen to play better than him, they'll beat him. Otherwise, he'll perform to a level, I should think, all the time. He's thrown in the odd bad performance over the years. You think, well, how's he lost to a certain player? But in general, yeah, if you beat John Higgins, you know about it. You've had you've either played at your best or you've had a sort of slightly flattering result. And like I say, for Fergal O'Brien, it can't be a good draw playing John. There might be other players nearer the top of the ranking list who he would prefer to play.
17.
Higgins is in the top section of the draw, along with the likes of Mark Allen and, of course, defending champion Ding Junhui, who's right at the top.
18.
But on the face of it, you would expect Higgins to make a pretty deep run here if he can continue with the form he's shown early season. Also in the top half, of course, are Eurosport's Jimmy White and Alan McManus doing battle in the opening round. 30 years after their first meeting. Although he's 2-0 up and building a lead here, we've seen 1 or 2 moments of frustration for Higgins this evening when positionally things haven't quite gone to plan. And there's another example.
Yeah, just once or twice that cue ball has gone astray, isn't it? Not dramatically, but enough for him to require a bit of extra thought.
Right at the bottom of the draw, Ronnie O'Sullivan. I mentioned he plays Leo Fernandez on Wednesday evening. The winner of that to play either Alex Ursenbacher of Switzerland or Nigel Bond. Matthew Stevens is in that section, so I guess it's conceivable O'Sullivan could play Stevens for the third time this season. They've won one each. O'Sullivan avenging his loss at the English Open last week at the Northern Ireland Open.
Well, he just overhit that slightly, didn't he? Any slower, I think he would have accepted the ball, but it was the speed he wanted to play it at to make the pot gettable. Just an element of negativity, though, because he played the cue ball down the table a little.
Wow, how did that not drop?
Yeah, it took him by surprise, didn't it? See it again. It was actually always a little to the top draw, but I've seen them drop before. You know those. John would prefer the other red not to follow it through. Yeah, good shot. Hit that any harder, maybe both threads would have gone in, but he's more than happy to save that one for a little later on in the break. Of course, you only get 2 points. You don't get 2 shots at a colour. Just you get an extra point and then you play a colour. If pot 2 reds at once.
And this frame following the pattern of the first two, with O'Brien having half chances, nothing more. And Higgins, even though he's not been clinical so far, playing well enough to threaten to extend his lead further. But once again, the cue ball's not great, even though it's a dead straight pot.
$13.
47 the lead, still 75 there at present.
Well, that wasn't a very well played shot either. He'd be annoyed there. The cannon's gone wrong. He didn't mean to hit that red. He meant to hit the red on the edge of the bunch. That will annoy him. Just getting a little bit too much on certain shots. As I say, he's not entirely comfortable on the table. But that is typical of John. Look how well he's recovered it. It was a really nice piece of cueing, actually.
21.
Yeah, because it was played in the knowledge that he'd played a poor shot, so he was having to deal with that disappointment in his mind, but stroked that in superbly. It was very missable, wasn't it? And it looks like another frame has gone south for Fergal O'Brien.
27.
So even though Higgins not absolutely on his A game, he's good enough to be dominating here. Yeah, 62 the difference, only 59 left. It's a similar tale for Fergal. Well, this felt a bit like a must-win frame for O'Brien to get an early foothold if he was to entertain
35.
thoughts of the upset. The next one certainly is before the interval.
John Higgins, 35.
Well, 3 snookers required. Higgins once again will be a little annoyed to have missed that. But it's a tall order.
One.
At least it gives O'Brien, if nothing else, a chance to pot a few.
Yeah, it's a tall order to think that Fergal could win the frame here, but you know he will try. He just needs to try and take the sting out of the match, which isn't really, he's not really been involved in yet very much.
No, he'd scored just 19 points in the first 2 frames combined.
9.
Just while we watch these snookers, plenty of people have made contact, including a big snooker fan, Kelly Barker,
16.
who is watching Ding play some good stuff last week, has backed him at 20 to 1 for this event, although after the match with Ronnie, not so sure now. Sabir watching in Peterborough, enjoying it. Also nice comments for us in the comments box. Robbo or Selby for me, says Danny Clark. Well, and as we see that go in, Miller for Sophia
17.
says Neil Robertson. My heart says, but my head says Judd Trump. Usual suspects mentioned there. Don't blame them.
Yeah, and Ding's form remains a bit of a curiosity, doesn't it? Because his exceptional UK Championship run last season was kind of out of the blue, given that his form had been very modest. It's been relatively modest since, although at times he looked great last week and looked great at the start of that match against O'Sullivan, but faded quite badly, having failed to take a 3-1 interval lead. O'Sullivan eventually winning 4 on the bounce. But clearly he has the pedigree, having won it 3 times, Ding. No snooker on this occasion for O'Brien. I noticed that Ding has made a few comments in the build-up to this tournament about his fellow Chinese players, some of the younger breed coming through, who have been tipped for many years now to eventually dominate the rankings, which hasn't quite happened yet. Yan Bingtao is the only other member of the top 16, Ding aside, and he actually questioned the work ethic of some of the youngsters, saying that they're going to need to work harder to realise their ambitions. He made the point that it's not easy to come over from China, have to fend for yourself, living away from friends and family and adjusting to a new culture. It is tough, but of course it's necessary if you are to make it to the top. And of course Ding is revered by his fellow players for what he's achieved. And they have a brand new academy to play in Sheffield, just a stone's throw from the World Championship. Ding opening that academy not only to perfect his preparations for big events, but also to try and help and encourage the young Chinese players to realise their potential. But Ding clearly had the view that work needs to be done if they are to achieve that. Perhaps a mindset change is necessary in some cases. 47 the difference, only 35 there, so 3 snookers to tie. If that red had gone in, it was definitely over.
You know, I think Fergal likes where the pink and black are now situated, because you feel that he can get in behind those.
Barry Hawkins is in a hurry. He's about to go 3-0 up on Riley Parsons on the Eurosport app. Ben Williston and Andy Hicks are level at 1 each. Gerard Green has taken the first frame against Daniel Wells, who's on a break of 50 in the second. Higgins will know this frame should have been over a few minutes ago. He missed an easy red when perhaps his concentration had just wavered a little, knowing that he was effectively over the winning line, but he's got to be a bit careful here. This is certainly missable.
Well, it's still a pretty good table for getting snookers, but as we know, John is one of those that he's not going to miss many, so they're going to be pretty hard to get the points from. There's bad shot to leave the red over the hole or near the hole. Might be end of frame.
John Higgins.
He's had enough as Fergal, and it's 3-0.
Yeah, nothing really going the way of O'Brien at the moment. He's had half chances in all frames, but Higgins is scoring pretty well. He's pretty solid so far, and he's already halfway to a place in the second round. He leads by 3 frames to 0. Without hitting the heights, has been very effective so far in taking his chances well enough to lead 3-0 in no time at all, really. So this 4th frame, the last before the interval, absolutely pivotal for Fergal O'Brien, you would think. Has to get a foothold before the midway point. And he's had very little table time so far, just a handful of points to show for his efforts. Can he stroke in this long red? Not easy when you've been sitting in your chair for most of the match. Black's tied up as well. Just a reminder, our feature match is tomorrow. Kyron Wilson against Ashley Hugill. And then in the evening, Sean Murphy against Lee Walker. Murphy actually won this title back in 2008 in pretty dramatic circumstances. Final frame decider against Marco Fu. He actually fluked match ball, championship ball.
Well, as you said earlier, this is a must-win, really, this frame. Fergal has got to start to string a few breaks together. As you pointed out also, he was behind against Mark Selby. I suppose he could, as you see, the average shot time's just under 30 seconds, but then he'll get a little quicker. Of course, you wonder maybe why he is ranked so low, 120. He went off the tour, didn't he? And it's actually just got in on the 1 year list, didn't he? And it was 250 quid ahead of Michael White. So that's how close it was. Of course, the ranking is artificial in that it's the first year of a 2 year card. He's only got a few points to go against 2 years of everybody, but by the end of next season, he'll be judged by those. So he's basically starting with a clean piece of paper this season, isn't he?
Yes, and that win over Selby would certainly have given him a real boost to produce a performance like that so early in the season. he is a very capable player. 228 career centuries is indicative of the fact that he can score very heavily when he gets on a roll, as he proved in that extraordinary win over Hawkins in this event 4 years ago with 5 centuries and a best of 11. Takes some doing. The very best of all time would have been proud of that. And of course, he's the only player
15.
to make a century in his very first frame at the Crucible. He made his debut back in 1994. Played Alan McManus. He lost 10-7, but century in the very first frame. Of course, he beat Luca Brissell in World Championship qualifying. And only just missed out to Liang Wenbo, 10-9 in the final qualifying round. But again, it's not gone to plan. Just the snooker.
Go around 16.
Yeah, I think Wenbo made a huge break in the decider, didn't he? Over 140.
Yes, that's right. It was a cracking match.
Well, I think he must have just brushed against the red. It looked like he only hit the pink there, but Desislava Boshalova was on the spot. And I can only guess that it did just brush the red.
This, of course, the last frame before the mid-session interval. During that interval, we'll just remind you of how Mark Selby came through earlier against Michael White. It was a tough old match for Selby. Went down to the penultimate frame in the end, so we'll bring you a few highlights of that. Quite a lengthy match, but a high-quality one nonetheless. Selby would certainly have been wary of the threat carried by White, who, when he gets on a roll, can be dangerous. He's a quick player, instinctive player. Yes, he's struggled for form in the last few seasons. That's why he's fallen off the tour. But remember, he's a multiple ranking titleist, so he's no mug. And he proved that this afternoon. Good early workout for Selby. Who has lost in this event in surprising circumstances a couple of times in the last few seasons. Scott Donaldson beat him. James Cahill got the better of him in the early rounds, so he'll be relieved to be through.
He got close to it, but as you saw, the red came out into a potable position.
One.
He's got a very good temperament, O'Brien, so he won't allow the disappointments of the first 3 frames to be affecting him. He knows that if he can win this one, well, he's given himself a chance.
8. Nine.
Aside from that British Open triumph, of course, Fergal came within spitting distance of being a Masters champion. Led the late Paul Hunter 7-3 before Hunter surged back, as he did on 3 occasions, from the brink of defeat to win 10-9. Did it against Williams and O'Sullivan as well, Hunter, in a tournament that he really did excel in. But to get to the Masters final and to get so close to winning it is an achievement in itself. Hard to believe that was nearly 20 years ago.
Four, 24.
Don't think there's anything else left when this red goes in that will pot. But both players have really struggled on the blue to get the correct side of it for the next shot. To be honest, he never really went into them with enough pace there to ever threaten that he was going to get anything open. Handy lead this, but now he's got to try and get this frame. He can't do it here again, but he's got to nurse his over the line, get to the mid-session interval with something next to his name. Now he's trying to put a red safe.
Over 30.
Barry Hawkins is 4-0 up at the interval against Riley Parsons on the Eurosport app. Daniel Wells and Gerard Green level at 1-all, as are Ben Williston and Andy Hicks.
Got to miss that pink on the way back up the table. I don't know if he gave that much thought, you know, put his hand up, whether he put his hand up because he got a nice kiss or whether he hadn't really considered this red. I mean, it's possible he could have gone for it, but got the feeling that he didn't, just his reaction.
And it's a pretty tidy table still, isn't it? So that lead of 45 now for O'Brien, not necessarily that significant.
You get the feeling it comes down to one shot. If he does get top side of the blue this time, and he's not done it yet in this match. Oh, and isn't it amazing? He's just not quite got the pace of this table. He's doing okay at 3-0, of course, but at this level, that's not the most difficult shot. If anything, you'd rather he went too far than finished straight. And he's bewildered by that.
Well, that's something of a reprieve for Fergal O'Brien, because if Higgins had got a nice angle on the blue and had got the cannon right into the remaining cluster of reds, Could have been 4-0 there.
Surprising shot, though, not to go for the blue or anything.
So 40 points to lead, 67 remaining. O'Brien could do with a safe colour. He can make it happen somehow. Give himself a bit of insurance. Looking at a possible plant here. And he's got it. And he's on the pink.
1.
Well, concern now for Fergal.
Well, it's opened the frame up, hasn't it? Completely. It's a pretty brave plant to take on. Didn't look a natural. So yeah, John now, despite being a few behind, is arguably favourite. See, I guess from where he is with the cue ball, you're going to hit it
7.
the side you need to, if you like, to make that plant happen, because they weren't in line. He did a thicker contact on the first red than the pot. Still well played, and might just allow him to extend his lead here. A couple of safe-ish reds.
And has there been a player more adept in the history of this game at clearing up from some distance behind than Higgins? He has produced some miraculous clearances down the years under the most extreme pressure in the very biggest finals this game can offer. He's done it time and time again.
Didn't play that very well. I don't know what he played on there. I've a feeling he played on the pink. Didn't mean to be that high on the black. Right. It's worked out in his favour, but I'm sure he didn't mean to finish there.
15.
I think the World Snooker website recently posed the question, which player in the history of the game would you choose to play for your life in one frame? The likes of Selby, Higgins, O'Sullivan and others were possible options. I think I'd go for this guy.
No, I wouldn't argue with that. Now, hang on a minute. Has he held the spot? If he has, he's very, very lucky. Because an inch or two further up the table, he would have been snookered. The blue would have respotted. But he has not got the table pace. He keeps on under-hitting.
This needs some podding, but if it goes in, Higgins arguably favourite. And he's missed it, near jaw. Well, what a relief for Fergal O'Brien, because had that dropped, they were all there for Higgins, who, although he's 3-0 up, doesn't look entirely happy tonight.
No, he was uncomfortable all the way through that little break.
1.
He sensed it. He's not come to grips with the conditions. I must say, I thought this was in when he hit it. I think he did as well.
Well, absolutely vital now for the underdog to make the most of that reprieve, which looked unlikely. 27 in front, so it's a formality really, just this red colour to make sure, and he'll have his first frame. That'll make the 15-minute interval a little sweeter.
9. 15.
34 the lead with the colours left, so it's 2 snookers for Higgins.
Yes, and Fergal is not going to go for this either, I don't think.
I'll go around 15.
Well, he should have done enough, but of course he'll be mindful that he's up against one of the greatest tacticians in the game's history. Oh, but that's in off.
Oh.
It's been a curious session, really, because although Higgins leads 3-1, you can tell that he's not entirely happy with the way he's playing, and he did have a chance there to make it 4-0, and then it's almost match over. But Fergal O'Brien, crucially for him, has the frame, and so instead of a 4-frame deficit, it's just 2. And at the mid-session interval, it's John Higgins who leads by 3 frames to 1. He needs 3 more for victory. Outwardly, some signs of frustration this evening. Even when he was 3-0 up, he didn't look entirely happy, perhaps not thrilled with the way in which he's failed to keep the tightest of reins on the cue ball so far. But for O'Brien, well, it was a vital frame for him to win, to just give himself a sniff, and that is not the way to start the second half of the match, crashing into the blue off the break. And leaving a very potable red for Higgins with the black available. We've talked a lot about the break-off shot in recent times and whether it's now become more of a curse than an asset. Used to be considered an advantage to get yourself in with a chance of putting your opponent in trouble, but Higgins has missed that red by quite a way. He almost hit the wrong side of it.
Now he's struggling a bit, as I say, 3-1 up, but not. He's not really built on that with his form. He could have won the 4th frame, as we've said. So there's a few signs that this might still be, you know, clearly at the beginning he'd be very happy with 3-1 up. But is he happy with his form? It's just a slightly different matter.
Yeah, the Higgins of the early rounds of last week would have slotted in that red, been perfectly on the black, and you'd have backed him to make something big. But just looking to find his very best form here in the second half of the match. Well, that certainly opened things up. Decent safety from O'Brien. He's got a good cue ball.
Quite a good safety shot, that, you know. I know he's not really got Fergal in a lot of trouble, but he's done well to escape. He was in trouble himself. Sometimes you just got to get yourself out of that area of the table, which is a danger. I think he did it quite well.
Higgins won his first UK title, as mentioned, back in 1998, the year he won his first World Championship. Beat Matthew Stevens in the final. That was the year the tournament moved from the Guildhall in Preston, one of snooker's iconic venues, to the Bournemouth International Centre, where it was staged for a few years. And of course it moved to the Barbican in York. Considered, though, second only to the World Championship in terms of prestige, certainly in terms of ranking events. I guess the Masters is obviously also a blue ribboned event which would carry a similar cachet, but that's invitational based on ranking performances in other events. Higgins at the moment just not quite feeling it out there.
Well, he got nowhere near that, did he? I mean, he just hit the bottom cushion. This is a very, I mean, he's clearly gone for it. It's one of them you almost wonder, but clearly he went for that, and he's missed it by a mile. And as good a temperament as he's got, as much as he's seen it, everything inside out, he knows the game, he'll be annoyed or maybe a little bit puzzled why he's hit it so badly. He'd only be human. Sometimes with this game, you play a bad shot, one that you cue badly, and of course you have a lot of time to dwell on it, sitting around, often waiting for your next shot, and your mind can play tricks. Just needs to keep looking at the score. 3-1 up. It's a good lead. And in general, as I said earlier, his form has been good. He just got beaten a couple of times by Ding Junhui, which clearly is nothing to be ashamed of. Goodness, he's the current champion of this event. But he'd beaten him in the English, but then lost to him twice since. Anyway, John Higgins, you've got another great chance, because Fergal has made a safety error there, and quite a significant one.
One.
John got a chance to regroup here, in first, crucially. Just to get his concentration together. Attempt to get enough points on the board to restore the 3-frame lead, but it's a question of getting the black in play if he possibly could. That would help him no end.
Four. Five.
Well, he's landed in the worst place you can think of. I mean, there's so many reds that go, and he has landed absolutely nowhere. Anywhere either side of that red he's close to, then he's got shots at a number of balls. I don't think the red goes up into the top left. It looks to me like the blue's in the way, but just have to take your medicine, don't you, sometimes, and play safe. But you'd be very annoyed to have only made 8 there. Goodness, it was a chance.
O'Brien will be very conscious of the fact that Higgins isn't quite at the races yet, but of course it's down to him to try and capitalise on that. Higgins, who's passed 800 career centuries this season. 11 already this season, indicative of the fact that he's been scoring pretty heavily again. Ahead of Hendry now on the all-time list, and only O'Sullivan in front of him, albeit 260 in front. Judd Trump has moved up to 4th place ahead of Neil Robertson as a result of his exploits last week in winning his hat-trick of Northern Ireland Open trophies. 748 for Trump now to 743 for Robertson.
Looks like he might be having a go at this, trying to steer the cue ball around a gap. Oh dear. And when you miss the pot, you see on those, well, as you missed the pot. Ooh. I want to say, when you miss the pot, you know, the idea of getting the cue ball around the table, you lose the shape of the shot you were trying to play. And of course, it's more important when you miss it to get the cue ball round. So it's the other side of the coin. I thought that was going to drop in the middle.
He's been giving Higgins quite a few chances tonight, O'Brien. Higgins hasn't always been able to take them in the way he wanted, but he keeps getting them.
One.
Again, that's pretty ordinary, really. By Higgins standards, anyway. Have a fun when you're playing into a blind pocket. In other words, looking away from where you're aiming.
Once again, the cue ball's not quite gone as far as he would have liked. I think he wanted to be on the red to the right of the black, which would have cleared the black to both corners.
8.
He's played it well enough, this shot. I think he's got a red to the same pocket that the black's just gone in. But he's also playing this bottom one now. This has got to go in. And that he did hit better.
9.
That was a bit more like it. And this remains a decent opportunity. He's second of the frame. Well, there's more for choices here. Looking at the red to the middle, the red on the pink spot. Keeps going back to the red in the middle. Now he's back on the other one. Torn. I don't think he feels as confident with his cue ball enough to play a pinpoint positional shot on a colour. So we're happy to play in an area. It's not too bad. So the pink spot is now covered, but it's now, things have started to calm down a little bit here.
3.
Because now, if you can just run this through on the black to the opposite corner. could be away.
24. Thirty-one.
His best break so far, the 72 in the opening frame. He made a pair of half centuries to lead 2-0. Again, not as intended, getting the cannon on the red. So his next shot far from straightforward.
And playing this red, he's got to try and avoid those 4 reds in the middle of the table. He's got to try and get into the cue ball a little bit. Playing the black into the same pocket. Played it well, you know. I mean, it was just quite a controlled shot. You don't think of John Higgins as being a particularly good rest player. It's not something he ever gets associated with, but he's pretty reliable.
Seven. Forty-eight.
75 remaining, 56 the lead, 62 with the blue, with the pink I should say, so it's pretty close to making it 4-1.
Now, where's he finished? I think the red in the middle of the 4 might go.
This red and pink or black would do.
55.
So he just had a quiet spell, didn't he, John? Where he had chances. Even at the start of this frame, he missed a couple. But this is where he's, as I say, so good. He knows exactly what he needs to do. And he's put a couple of bad shots behind him.
62.
Without ever looking all that impressive. He's won a frame in basically one visit, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think the key is that
63.
when he has made a mistake, O'Brien has quite often left him back in pretty quickly with another really good chance. That happened again in this frame. So he's not really been put under pressure so far.
71.
It's been very solid from Higgins without being anywhere near his best, but in the first round of these tournaments, the most important thing is to win, of course. In fact, you don't necessarily want to play your best early on. You want to save that
77.
for later in the piece, but most important thing is to avoid an upset, get through, and build your game from there.
Played that nicely just to get the other red in play. And now, in pulling this red, I think he'll shift the other red that's near a cushion
85.
for the century. Well, that's just very nice, isn't it?
86.
Very controlled. All part of the plan. I think he'll feel better about this, you know. I'd say 4-1 up, should be happy anyway. But if he can make a century here, which seems very likely, he's made enough in his career for it not to count. But I think just give him a little boost when there was just an indication that he wasn't flat out tonight. Sprung into life with this break.
$96.
So yellow and green for his 12th century of the season.
98. $101.
So far, it's been a very open game. Guess there was always the chance that things could get a bit bogged down,
105.
but that's not been the case at all in the first 5 frames.
$110.
And for a guy who's not been thrilled with his performance, as O'Brien psychs himself up for frame 6, this is pretty decent, isn't it?
116.
He's taken them very nicely. A 123 clearance from the 2 times, make it 3 times UK champion.
So he is 123.
And Fergal O'Brien's task just got harder. Higgins 2 away from a place in the round of 64 here at the Marshall Arena in Milton Keynes. Just 2 required for a meeting with either Gerard Green or Daniel Wells. They're underway this evening as well, of course. An update on their situation to come shortly. Barry Hawkins on the Eurosport app, by the way, has lost his first frame of the evening, but still leads Riley Parsons 4-1. Andy Hicks has taken a 3-1 interval lead over Ben Wollaston. And Wells and Green are still locked together at 1-1, so that's proving to be quite a battle on one of our outside tables. Just a reminder, this is the first day of 4 days of coverage for the first time ever for the first round of the UK Championship here on Eurosport. Plenty of big hitters in action, including the likes of O'Sullivan, Trump and Murphy. And then the second round, of course, gets underway on Saturday. 9 more days of action to determine the champion. Ding Junhui will also feature in our coverage, beginning the defence of his title, going for a 4th UK crown as Higgins finds an early red.
1.
He's
had a few plants this evening. There's another one.
Yeah, no, and I think that was intended. It looked on, didn't it? He's just maybe just getting over that little flat spot that he hit, and that looks to be a good shot. I think the problem so much tonight has been he has struggled a little bit, and it sounds strange at 4-1 up, but he has had a lot of chances, but he's just struggled with the conditions. I think he's struggled on the table. He's under-hit a lot of shots, and maybe he's not as fast or as responsive as he thought it would be. But now, as the match is worn on, I think he's now getting used to it.
$9. $10.
He'd like the black in play. It's a question of what goes red to the right of the black. If he could put it into the left corner, I suspect it might go. If he got behind it, then of course it would obviously clear the deck for the black, and then turn the other red. Everything's open then. I think he's played on that red exactly as I was pointing out. That red to the right of the black into the left corner. It's a key shot, and these great players recognise the important shots and then get the ball out of the way that's obstructing the high value colours, basically. He's not got the best cueing ever.
Seventeen.
It's okay.
$23. $24.
He's completely monopolised the table this evening, Higgins. Aside from that fourth frame when O'Brien did enough to get over the line in the end after Higgins had the chance to clear up. It's really been the 3 times champ completely dominating.
31.
And when he has made a mistake, he's got back in pretty quickly. It's not been so much
32.
potting errors, in fact, aside from the miss black in the opening frame, he's been very solid in that department. Just 1 or 2 positional errors, as we've mentioned, perhaps struggling at times to keep a tight rein on the cue ball, but he's put that right in the last frame and a half, a 1, 2, 3. And now this contribution.
Well, he's had a look at exactly what goes in the bunch.
40.
I think there are 1 or 2, maybe the bottom red goes, but the red that's to the right of it is kind of in its way a little. So he takes the red to the middle, which opens up the other red at the bottom of it. Things are looking up again.
47. $48.
And that's what I mentioned, that is clearly available. And
54.
need to get into the 5 reds here, although if he takes the other loose red with a high value colour, then the 5 reds don't really come quite into play so much.
Well, this red to the centre and 1 more black, and O'Brien will be facing that familiar sinking feeling of needing snookers.
$63.
Cued that very well, and this black then to leave O'Brien at the snooker's required stage.
I'm not too sure whether there's a plant or anything in there, but I don't think he's that bothered. Fergal will need to get a snooker if the break even ends after the black is potted, so I think he might just play the run through and get the reds open. He always felt the black was in. Now a little nudge. Didn't really have a lot of speed. He may be on one, you know. Don't know if he's on that left-hand red.
70.
Well, looks like he might be, and if he is, could be every chance of a consecutive century.
No, he's not on it. Anyway, that'll do. I'm sure he's more than happy with
John
that.
Higgins, 70.
So back-to-back breaks of 123 and 70 from Higgins to put him on the cusp of being 4 up with 5 to play. It is just the one snooker for O'Brien. Oh goodness, now it's 2.
John Higgins,
Things
4.
going from bad to worse for him. Doesn't look as though he's going to replicate his heroics against Selby at the German Masters at the moment. And with that red disappearing, he's certainly
1. John Higgins,
not
3.
going to do anything in this frame. O'Brien concedes in his chair, and John Higgins is getting stronger and stronger as this match goes on. He's looking very good in amongst the balls now, and the 3 times UK champion is on the cusp already of victory. He leads Fergal O'Brien. He's still made breaks of 72, 52, 56, 123 and 70, and he's now just a frame away from the round of 64 here at the Betway UK Championship. Fergal O'Brien at the moment playing just to get a couple more frames on the board really and make it look a bit more respectable before he can even consider the possibility of a comeback, needing 5 on the bounce. Hasn't had much of a look in tonight. He's had a few half chances, managed to win the 4th frame, but in most of the frames he's barely troubled the scorers.
Yes, he just hasn't played very well at all, has he, Fergal, tonight? I mean, I guess we always speak about what a great competitor he is, and that's undoubtedly true, but, you know, he did fall off the tour last year, all but for getting back on the one-year list, as we say, narrowly, so, you know, the results were not always coming in. You know, over the last couple of years, Fergal had not had the results, but it's not easy coming in against John Higgins either in round 1, whatever sort of player you are, let's be honest. Especially John Higgins, who generally is in better form. And now Fergal didn't get very close to that one, so things in some ways going from bad to worse, aren't they?
Yeah, and every time he does make a mistake, he seems to leave Higgins in. And of course, shots like that are that much tougher when you haven't had many shots. Daniel Wells has belatedly moved 2-1 in front of Gerard Green. It's been pretty heavy weather in that match so far, even though Wells made a 137 in the 2nd frame. The winner to play at the moment, it looks very likely to be the man at the table here.
1.
And
He'd like a clean kill, Higgins.
Yeah, he also liked the red away from the black spot before he could consider potting the black, but that might not be quite so easy to do. He's played on in an area down there, but he's overrun. So I think he played on that red on the black spot, because, as I say, they always recognise significant ball to get out of the way. But he's gone too far. Again, just a sign that he's not got his absolute best touch I've ever seen.
Could be a race to see who gets through first, John Higgins or Barry Hawkins, who's 5-1 up on Riley Parsons, and actually Hawkins is on a break of 40 in the frame he needs. So Higgins misses a tricky red.
John Higgins, 6.
And Fergal lives to fight another day. Andy Hicks 3-1 up on Ben Wollaston. We've had 10 centuries so far today. Neil mentioned Mark Selby's break of 140 earlier against Michael White. That's the best so far. £15,000 for the best break of the event. That's a good pot from Higgins, and
1.
a pretty nice kiss on the second red to keep him on the black.
Yes, there's just one break prize these days, isn't there? There's no. It used to be like a qualifying round break prize, which was completely separate from the main event. But as everyone starts in the same round now, they just have it as a pretty decent all-round prize, which means sometimes the break prize won't be seen on the television. It's just a break that you know has taken a place on an outside table, but they all count. At the moment, 140 was televised this afternoon, but over the space of now and the end of the UK Championship, you kind of feel that that's likely to get beaten. The standard we see there'll be a bigger break than that. It's not a bad yardstick, but
16.
you know, a lot of snooker to be played.
Yeah, we had a hatful of 140 plus breaks last week at the Northern Ireland Open, including, of course, Judd Trump's superb maximum, which netted him £5,000. 2 out of 2 home nations for Trump, with the Scottish Open just round the corner, following directly on from this event. And once again, you can watch every ball here on Eurosport. It's an absolute snooker fest between now and Christmas. We've also got the World Grand Prix to complete the 5 consecutive weeks of professional action. O'Brien will certainly be disappointed. It does feel as though every mistake he's made this evening has been magnified insofar as it's almost always left Higgins something to go at. He's not got away with anything tonight, Fergal.
30.
And this match has slipped away from him pretty quickly. Perhaps rather more quickly than many might have anticipated at the start of the evening. It looked like a tough match in prospect, perhaps quite a lengthy one, but at the moment it's not panned out that way.
No, that was a bad one, wasn't it? He hit that straight on. John hit one like that, actually, into that pocket earlier on, but didn't prove very costly. It's the point I was making about John being a reliable rest player, who never gets mentioned in very high esteem with the rest.
31.
Doesn't miss anything very easy with it. But here, he really could press on. There, 9 from 9. There you have it. Some of them would have been not so difficult, but a couple have been quite good shots. And that's another good shot. He's on a choice of reds now. Just going into the side of the bunch is usually better than straight in the middle, where the cue ball can sometimes stick to them.
He won his second UK crown 20 years ago, his third 10 years ago. Could he possibly make it 4 after a further decade-long gap? Well, the answer is emphatically yes, he could, if he produces the kind of form that he has been in stages of this newish season, and indeed tonight. He will be a contender for sure.
44.
Well, it's gone very wrong, hasn't it? I don't even know what he can get to there. I think that's one of those, he couldn't really foresee that happening. Might be that John plays safe here and just puts the black somewhere out of the game, depending on whether, of course, you can see the yellow. The red and the cube will just chase each other. I think he's nominated yellow. Just happy to be 50 in front second prize,
Higgins 45.
first prize was just to clear up and shake hands, or whatever you do now at the end of a match. Fergal won't give up. I know he's not that type, but he's not getting anywhere at the moment at all. John now decides that the pink needs to go on the side cushion, nailed to the cushion as well. He's now giving it the sand and cement treatment, isn't he? Why wouldn't he?
Yeah, make the table as awkward as he can to reduce the chances of an effective counter-attack if O'Brien does get in. Ah, terrific pot, and that surely is going to be the beginning of the end for O'Brien.
Very well struck. It's a very professional performance so far from John Higgins, who, I guess, on a day when he's playing at his best, it all fits into place. But he's worked hard, and it's not been the perfect display, but it's been pretty efficient, and he's on the brink now.
This red colour and another red should do it. A night to forget at the moment for the Irishman. Had that stunning success against Mark Selby, coming from behind to win in German Masters qualifying. But that's never looked likely to be repeated tonight, and with that superb cannon, it certainly won't be.
14.
And so Higgins has beaten Barry Hawkins to victory, who's on the cusp against Riley Parsons on the Eurosport app, 5-1 up. But he'll have to wait a while to see who he'll play in round two, Higgins, with Daniel Wells still 2-1 up on Gerard Green. Whoever comes through that will face the three-times champ in the round of 64, which gets underway, of course, on Saturday. Heavy scoring, though, from Higgins.
30.
72, 52, 56, 123, 70. And he's been at it again in this frame. He's been really enjoying his snooker again of late. We've mentioned the changes he's made to his cue with a new ferrule made of titanium, which he feels as though it's made definite improvements to his game, giving him more options with his shot making.
39.
And it's hard to argue with that when you watch him play as he's done this evening. A thoroughly comprehensive win for John Higgins. Fergal O'Brien was never in the picture this evening, just the one frame for him before the interval, but he wasn't able to build on it. Higgins was just way too strong for him as he sails through to the round of 64 here at the Marshall Arena, Milton Keynes, by 6 frames to 1. Well, that was pretty merciless from Higgins, clinical,